All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Giovanni Zarur. This is Louie and we'd like to begin our first event of the semester, which is the Business Club's one-on-one event on being a CEO in the tech industry. So I'd just like to welcome you all and introduce our speaker here, Louie Saad, who's the co-founder and CEO of Datastream IT, which is an IT services firm that provides business-to-business IT solutions to their clients. I'd also like to mention Louie is a USC alumnus. This event is organized and hosted by the USC branch of the Business Club Network, Business SC. Again, I'm your host, Giovanni Zarur, chairman of Business SC. I'd also just like to mention that we'll be allocating some time for audience questions at the end of the panel. So if you're in the audience, feel free to leave any questions you have in the live stream chat and we'll address them later. So just to get straight into the conversation, Louie, could you please briefly introduce yourself, including your background, education, career timeline, and any hobbies you'd like to do outside the workplace?
Thanks, Giovanni. Well, first of all, it's really good to be here. Thanks for having me. I was excited at the invitation to speak to the club. And as you mentioned, I'm a USC grad and very proud of that. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, actually Glendale, and grew up there, went to Glendale Public Schools, and then went to USC to study business and ultimately ended up studying accounting. So that's a long story in and of itself. But I was just very excited by accounting, as weird as that sounds, being able to read financial statements and understand a business just by looking at their financials and being able to see the history of what they've done and where they're going and so forth. So I never wanted to be a CPA or be an accountant, but I figured that having an accounting degree and getting that background would be beneficial to my business. So as I mentioned, graduated from USC with an accounting degree. And then while I was at USC, I started my business, Datastream IT, with a business partner. And the two of us kind of grew it while we were at USC and then grew it after we left and kind of decided, at one point, we can go full force with the business and give it a shot. And when it's low risk, we don't have a mortgage, we don't have a family at that point. And so we decided to do that and grew the business up until a point of 5 years ago when I bought my business partner out. So I bought him out of the business and now I'm the sole owner. So I'm a co-founder, but at this point I'm 100% owner of the business. And in terms of the hobbies that you asked about, I like to golf, as old school as that probably may seem to a lot of people. It's a very social sport. And I like activities that I can meet people. So I like going to events. I like being part of associations where I get to meet people in my industry or, meet people outside my industry and so forth. So, and just to bring it up to speed now, I live here in Glendale. I have a wife, her name is Tamar, and I have two boys, Jack, who's 3 years old, and George, who's 1 year old.
That's great. That's so amazing. Yeah. For everyone tuning in, just this is a little fun fact. Louie and I are actually both from the same city. We went to the same high school and obviously both USC alumni. And so I actually networked with him because I was going to intern for him at around this time last year. And we just had so much in common. So that's something I wanted to throw out, which I thought was actually a pretty interesting thing to know.
For sure.
Yeah. And I heard, as you said, you started Datastream while you were a student at USC, which first off is very impressive, being able to start a full-fledged business and continue with it for what has it been, almost 15 years now for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all the way through. So my question is, how did you come up with the idea to start Datastream and sort of where did it all begin? The IT stuff that you were doing, especially as an accounting major, how did you end up getting into the space of technology and IT?
Yeah, very good question. So I was always a computer geek. I grew up loving computers, and my uncle gave me a computer for my birthday when I think I was like 10 years old. So I loved taking that computer apart, putting it back together. It was like a used computer from his work that he gave me. Like, it was still a really nice piece of equipment. So I was kind of a computer geek, and I grew up at an interesting time. I was born in 1982, and that period of time was such where I grew up seeing a world with no internet. As weird as that may seem for all you guys out there, I was old enough to see that world in elementary school. In middle school, we started to see the internet. High school, for sure. And by the time I graduated from USC, the internet was like a way that we submitted papers and research was done on the internet. So I saw that transition literally while I was in school. Talk to people younger than me, they're like, I don't remember a time before the internet. Talk to people older than me, they're like, yeah, most of my career was, before the internet. I get it. So I kind of saw that transition. So to me, it was a very exciting time with, .com startups and companies starting up. And, we saw people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. So we decided to, since it was a passion of ours, start a company that was based in technology. And to be honest with you, when my partner and I, we met in the ninth grade in English class at Glendale High School, and eventually went to Clark Magnet, and then went to USC together. We were trying to think of, like, we wanted to be business people. So we're like, okay, should we start a real estate company? People seem to be making money in real estate. Should we start this company? Should we start that? And then my partner is the one that said, you know what? We're both tech guys. We run home and play with our computers as soon as we get home. This is what we love. This is what we know. So why don't we start a company based around technology? So that's kind of how we like looked at a bunch of different business models and ended up picking the one that was closest to us. And you mentioned, my major of accounting. As I mentioned earlier, accounting was always just a background for me to be able to use in my business. So I never wanted to be an accountant. I never wanted to be a CPA. I just, it's a great career path, but for me, I wanted to use those skills to further my business. So that's kind of the marriage of like being a tech guy, studying accounting in school, and putting the two together to run a business.
Sure. So to piggyback off that, I'm kind of going to go off script, but this is kind of a hard and maybe debated question. But being that you were an accounting major and you ended up having so many valuable skills in the tech industry and starting your own tech company, do you believe that a college education is just not, helpful but not necessary towards getting to a certain industry? Because a lot of people would say, oh, if you want to go into tech, you need to, major in computer science or information systems. But, you're a clear testament to the fact that that's not necessarily the case, right?
Very good question. It's an awesome question, because I absolutely think that college is not necessary for people nowadays, depending on your path. Like if you want to be a programmer, even if you want to start a business, you can learn everything about starting a business, online or by, relying on people that are close to you, right? So it's not necessary. And I think that's changing. And I think of my kids who are 3 years old and 1 year old. And I'm like, would I push them to go to college? I don't know. I don't know how much the world's going to change. However, for me, personally, I was able to study something that I really enjoyed. And for me, I'm lucky enough that at the time I was thinking, okay, I'm going to learn accounting. I'm going to go crazy in it. It's not something that maybe would interest me to like learn on, well, there wasn't YouTube at the time in the way that it is now, but people are lucky now, including myself, that we can do this, right? But it's not something I was going to like get books and learn accounting on my own. So I'm like, you know what? Of all the things I can learn technology like in the middle of the night by myself, like playing with computer components. I can do this, I can do that. But accounting or finance or something like that is something that I prefer it to be taught to me. And like if I'm going to do something at college, I'm going to have it be this nitty gritty thing. So while I don't think it's necessary, necessarily, I do think it's helpful for certain people depending on what they're going to do with it. And I also think, the ability to have a college education and be able to meet people and be at that level of status in society is, for whatever it's worth, something that is valued. So I think the name of USC, the reputation it has, and the fact that you have a degree from anywhere, I think is valuable at this point, but that might change.
True. Yeah. I was having a conversation earlier at another meeting that, coming to school is valuable for the degree you get, the prestige of the college you go to, the connections you can make at that institution. But being that we are in the day and age that we're in, there's definitely resources, especially on the internet and just all over the place, where anyone can learn anything about any industry or any academic discipline. So I mean, I think that's a good lesson for anybody who wants to get into something but doesn't necessarily have the means to get into it. I mean, the internet's right there, so that would be my input on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, like, I mean, it's like an ongoing joke that like Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, at one point the richest man in the world, didn't graduate from college. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, you know, at one point one of the richest men in the world and one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the world, never graduated college. So that's not to say that everyone should follow that path, but it's, you know, it's a clear testimony to things changing over time. So it just depends on what you're gonna do with it. I mean, if you're doing a major just to do it and spending a lot of money and you don't like it, that would be an issue. But if there's something you can get out of it, I would add that also the experience of being on campus, the experience of, you know, meeting people your age from different backgrounds, from different, you know, ethnicities, and coming together with some commonality and learning from that. That's also a very important part of growing up. So we can't discount it too much. It's just you have to kind of have an open mind when you do it and take from it what you will.
Of course. Thank you. So being that you did start Datastream while you were in college, which is impressive, as I said, how did you manage running a business while simultaneously doing all your classes and just living your college life? And what would you recommend to other college students who are aspiring entrepreneurs?
So you touched on something earlier when you said that's impressive that I started the business while I was in college, and I'm going to connect that to my answer. Okay. At the time, I didn't think it was that impressive, and then still looking back, I didn't think it was that impressive. The reason is, you know, I had no additional risk, right? Because it wasn't like I was leaving a job maybe that paid six figures, like, you know, some people do when they're in their 30s and 40s, leave that job, start a business, and then take a big risk, invest money, and, you know, have a mortgage, have a family. That wasn't me, because I was 20 years old at the time, 21, you know, right before I graduated. I was just doing some, you know, research on the business, started working in the business, started getting clients. You know, we got a client 1 month, cool. 3 months, 4 months, we didn't get a new client. Then 5 months later, we got another one, while we managed our social life of going to football games and doing everything. So we took an approach that was like, we didn't want to stress ourselves out. We didn't want to take over the world. We just figured like slow and steady, enjoy college, do it one step at a time, and, you know, sign up a big client. That's awesome. Stay up late, work on the client, you know, and just kind of like take it as it came. We didn't stress ourselves out too much. We wanted to enjoy the college experience. So the advice that I would give to someone is to get started and don't worry about it being small, because every business, you know, that an entrepreneur starts, like as a startup, is small in the beginning, you know, and don't be afraid to fail, and just, you know, just give it a shot and just do it. That's the main thing. Just do it, get started. You're going to learn a lot by a lot of trial and error. So just start with whatever idea you have, you know, do some research, but take a first step. Take a first step and know that it's not going to end up exactly the way you think it is. So just doing it is a thing, because if you wait till you're like 35 and you have a nice job, it's very difficult to like leave that job and then, you know, start your business and like give up the probably 6-figure paycheck and start your business at 35. That's, you know, each and every year after you graduate is harder. Like when you're 22, when you're 23, when you're 24, I mean, it's going to be tough to pull away from that. So that's my advice. Just jump into it. And like I said, it's not, when I look back at it, it's, you know, wasn't that risky. It wasn't that impressive. It was just just starting small and doing it.
Cool. Yeah. The risk horizon of a younger person is definitely greater than that of an older person. I mean, the way most people see it is when you're 30 years old, you have a wife and 2 kids and a stable job. You can't take the same risks in starting a business or becoming an entrepreneur that, let's say, a 21-year-old in college could. So a piece of advice I've definitely heard from a lot of people is take risks while you're young, because you can't while you're older.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, you can while you're older, but it's much harder. It's much harder, and you have to be way more gutsy to do it when you're older.
For sure.
And honestly, I don't know if I would have the guts to do it now. Like I'm 39. at the end of this year. I'll be 40 in a year, right? I don't know if I'd have the guts to do it now, like at this point. So I probably could, but there's a ton more risk associated with that. So
yeah. So you mentioned that you bought out your business partner.
yes.
What did your business partner end up doing afterwards? And how did your role change after you became the sole owner of Datastream?
Okay. So the roles that we had before my business partner left was that I was more sales and marketing. I was more client facing and getting new business and talking to clients and this and that. And my partner was more operations. So he was on the back end behind the laptop. He's a super smart guy, making sure that all the clients are taken care of, making sure the team is managed right. So to answer your first question, what he did is really cool, actually. He decided that he wanted to travel the world and, live in different parts of the world. And at the point of his life, he didn't like the stress of running a business and having the weight of the world on his shoulders. So I think it's really cool what he did. He traveled the world and ended up living in different places, lived in Asia. He traveled to Europe and lived there for a while. He's of Armenian descent. And then so he decided to live in Armenia for a couple of years, ended up getting married in Armenia. And now he's back in LA working on various projects. So he kind of did this like roundabout situation of like traveling the world and exploring life. And it's really cool. And so going back to how my role changed, since I was more client facing with the sales and marketing, I had to transition into doing that, but also learning the operations, learning the back end, learning how we service our clients. And I had to take on that role as well. So what I ended up doing is learning about that role completely from him because it was a good separation. I mean, we're on really good terms. We're still really good friends. He was good about like transitioning out of that role. We planned it in advance. And, he would help me along the way in terms of giving me information. So as I learned what he did with operations, I would then delegate that to members of our team. So we'd hire new members of the team and existing members of the team, I'd give them some of those responsibilities. And what I ultimately ended up doing is elevating a service manager in our company. And the service manager is an awesome guy that takes over the leadership of our clients and our team to run the operations in the day-to-day. And a lot of that's, what my partner previously did. So that's kind of how we transitioned and moved into different roles.
Cool. So you took that all over. So I want to know a little bit more about buying out your business partner. My question is, was your business incorporated at the time? And if so, what type? And what stock ownership how was the stock ownership divvied up when you bought him out?
Yeah, so our company was incorporated at the time. It was an S Corp. And as an S Corp, I owned 50% of the stock and my business partner owned 50% of the stock. And that's how we started it from day one. And we had a operating agreement that basically went over how the stock shares were distributed and roles and responsibilities. And then in the event that, someone dies, what happens? In the event someone wants to buy the other one out, what happens? So it was really good that we thought of that in advance. And we actually, for like the first 3 months of our business, we kind of went overboard, like meeting at my apartment, meeting at my business partner's apartment, and like just planning like all these contingencies of like, what happens if we die? What happens if this? What happens if that? Are we going to let like girlfriends work in the business? Are we going to let wives work in the business? No, let's not do that, because what if your wife works in the business and mine doesn't want to? You're going to get paid, and what if we have to fire her? So we went through all this kind of stuff, like kind of unnecessarily, but it was nice to go through that. So I say that because we were really well positioned when it was time for him to say, you know what, I want to go travel the world and do different things. We had this like 65-page agreement that like said, okay, if one wants to buy the other one out, here's how it works and so forth. So we had the terms of that agreement set, but in terms of the price for his 50% of the business, the first thing we needed to do was establish the price of the entire business. So how much is the entire business worth? And to do that, we did some research, because we had never bought or sold shares of a private business like that. We did a lot of research in our industry. We looked at how it was valued, and we found out that the way that our business is valued as MSP, and that stands for Managed Service Provider. It's a type of IT firm. The way that our business is valued is as a multiple of EBITDA, because we have recurring contracts. Every month we have money coming in from the type of work we do. And we have cost of goods sold, which is the labor, which is individuals that work for us. And then we have expenses like insurance and rent and all that type of stuff. That's expenses, whether or not we do work for our clients. And then at the end, we have EBITDA, which is basically our net profit. And in our industry, there's multiples of EBITDA. So depending on how large the company is from a revenue standpoint, there's different multiples of EBITDA, so X amount of EBITDA. So we did that. And then at the end of the day, it was interesting because we kind of like looked at all these different models and put it in Excel and then said, okay, it could be worth either this or it could be worth this. It's obviously somewhere in the middle. Let's look at some other factors. Let's look at how quick you want to leave. Let's look at how much work you want to do once you left. And he's like, let me work for like a year, just kind of transitioning out. Okay, so that dictates that. And then we just kind of like came to an agreement somewhere in the middle that was agreeable to both of us. So in our case, it wasn't like, we didn't have like consultants and pay all these people to like look at it. We were on such good terms that we just kind of figured out it's going to be in between this range and found a good price and, shook hands on it and then signed the paperwork, and that was it.
Wow. Yeah. That was a lot of accounting terms, sort of throwing me back to my accounting class, with the cost of goods sold and expenses and revenues. I'm thinking about balance sheets right now. Yeah, but regardless, I wonder how it was for you to sort of do business with someone who I'm assuming was your friend since high school. Did all the paperwork and did all the business get in the way whatsoever between your friendship with that person, or did your friendship vice versa get in the way with business, or was it not really a problem for you?
It wasn't really a problem because we met, as I said, in the ninth grade English class, and we realized that we were both like computer guys, and we also realized like within a few weeks that we both wanted to be entrepreneurs, and start a business. So just as soon as our business, just as soon as our friendship was like starting, also our business partnership was starting. So we kind of it was a unique scenario of always having like a very objective way at looking at things, a very business-like way of looking at things while still being really good friends. But everything was always like, it wasn't like we were like great friends and then like, oh, we're great friends, so we'll start a business. Those two things kind of happened at the same time. So that, like I said, the first thing we did when we started was 3 months of working in each other's living rooms at our apartments, like formulating this business plan. What happens if this happens? So it was like, at the end of the day, there was no room for anything other than like objective analysis of like, well, if you want to buy me out, then it's, this is how it happens. You have the right of first refusal. You can't sell to anyone other than, these types of individuals that have this experience. So it limits it to your partner. Like everything was basically in stone. So for us, it was kind of unique in the sense that it never got in the way on either side. Like business never got in the way of friendship, and friendship never got in the way of business.
That's great to hear. Now, I want to get into some more business specific questions on Datastream itself. What type of services does Datastream provide, and to what types of clients?
Great question. So Datastream provides IT services in the sense that our company becomes the IT department for our clients. And the term IT means information technology. If you think of a typical business, like a CPA firm, law firm, any company with a lot of people, I mean, look at examples like Netflix, right? There's an IT department there that runs the technology. And obviously they have what's called in-house IT, which means that individuals are hired by Netflix or they're hired by Deloitte, one of the largest accounting firms, to be IT internally. What our company does is we bring that IT department, so the policies, the procedures, the cybersecurity, the server management, cloud management, the end user support, the strategy, A to Z. We bring all of that to a smaller business. So our clients range in size from 20 users to 200 users. And, the average size client of ours is 85 users. So if you think of like a law firm with 85 users or a CPA firm with 125 users, that's the type of client that we take on. And those clients, have big concerns when it comes to cybersecurity and their data and their clients' data. I mean, think of a law firm or CPA firm, how much data they have for their clients, and how if that were breached, or if somehow there's an issue with that, they can go out of business because of it. So they value that very strongly. So our clients range, nonprofits, CPA firms, law firms, engineering companies, entertainment companies in LA, of course, there's a lot of entertainment companies, production, post-production. So you name it, any company that has a lot of people working for them that use technology and that value technology, and especially the ones that value cybersecurity, those are our clients. And as I mentioned, it's worth noting, our clients pay us a fixed monthly fee for everything. So that's a nice thing about our business model. We look at how many users they have, we look at how many sites they have, we look at the complexity of their business, and then we propose something to them based on that and say, we'll charge you this monthly. And it's always the same each month, and it encompasses everything that they need. The benefit to the client is that they're never going to get anything in excess of that unless there's a big project that we plan together with them. The benefit to us is that it's recurring revenue, meaning that every month, the checks keep coming in, and it's predictable revenue for us. It's predictable work for the client, and they pay us a reasonable amount to have everything working smoothly, and our goals are aligned. We want everything working smoothly, so we don't have to put a lot of effort above and beyond, the planned amount, and the clients want to pay a reasonable amount for everything to be going smoothly and efficiently.
Cool. So I did a little snooping on your website, and I saw certain services such as broadband internet, voice over IP, cloud computing solutions for clients. And all of these sound like services that face big competitors such as Amazon AWS, AT&T, Charter, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, the list goes on. Of course, many clients might not be able to get those services themselves, but many would, because companies such as Google and Microsoft make it simple for companies to or clients to use these as third parties for their own in-house IT. What incentives do your clients have to choose your services over directly going through big tech? And how do you sell yourself to your clients?
Good question. So if you think of our ideal client, remember, the average client size is 85,
Sure.
and they go up to 200. This is a client that values cybersecurity and they value their efficiency. So if you think of a law firm, for example, and I'm imagining one of our clients right now, 100 user law firm. You think of all the people that work for them, they bill like $1,000 an hour. They're very good at what they do. They have a structure to their business. They have specialists in this type of law. They have paralegals. They have people that run projects. They have administrators. They have this and that, right? All these people are running, and they just want their IT to work. So if you look at the example of like, they can go to AWS and purchase services, or Microsoft and get Azure or Office 365. These are all things that they might be able to do poorly, but when you say they, like, who is it at that firm? Is it the lawyer that's billing $1,000 an hour that's that knows a lot about law but doesn't know anything about technology? So the alternative is that they'd hire someone to do this, and then the pitch would then be, okay, you're going to hire someone to do this, whatever they're going to charge. Is that one person or two people or three people? Number one, are you going to be able to hire them effectively and understand who to hire in a technology role? Are you going to be able to fire them if you figure out they're doing the wrong thing or they're not doing their job correctly? You have no idea, as the main partner of a law firm, how to hire and fire these people, because it's absolutely not in your realm whatsoever. And that's so the alternative to our service is for them to actually construct an IT department, to set the policies and procedures, to hire these people who can then buy those appropriate services and set the policies for cybersecurity. Make sure that they're not just set up, but set up properly. So that's a big selling point for us. And when you tell them, like, for the cost of one or two employees per year, you can have an entire team that does everything from A to Z. And the person that sets your budget and sets IT strategy is different than the guy that is plugging in monitors and moving computers while these lawyers are working, right? So they can hire one or two people, but are those going to be the one or two people that are the right people for the job? Probably not. Are they going to know how to hire them? Probably not. Are they going to know how to set up an IT department? Probably not. So they're really like so grateful. Our clients are so grateful to see a service like us that they literally get the entire IT department out the gate. And you brought up a good question with things being commoditized. Like cloud services are commoditized. Technically, you can do a few clicks and get services. The way that I think of that is kind of like, it's kind of a funny example, but coffee, right? Like you can buy coffee beans in bulk, or you can buy coffee beans in small bags, or you can go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and you can buy coffee at Starbucks. For someone like me, I'm really busy. I have 100 things to do in a day. If I want coffee, I'm not going to go buy a 100-pound bag of beans and grind my beans for 20 minutes and then make coffee and sit there for 15 minutes and make coffee just so that I can grab coffee and go out the door. I'm going to go pay a very hefty premium to pay $4 at Starbucks so I get my coffee while I drive to work. So likewise, our clients, can they do that? Can they go buy, the commodity? Sure, but they value, they're all in it to make a profit and they want to be efficient. So they value that premium service of like, they go to Starbucks, they know exactly what they're going to get. They know how much they're going to pay. They go to Datastream, they know exactly what they're going to get. We have a reputation. They know what they're going to pay. And that's, absolutely worth the service when they look at their business model, their expenses and so forth. And the risk of doing it wrong is detrimental. Like I mentioned earlier, from a cybersecurity standpoint, the risk of, they set up all these things, halfway and they didn't know what they're doing and they're completely open. They're not doing like security penetration tests. They're not doing quarterly reviews of their security. It could be absolutely terrible and detrimental to the business to have like everything breached if things aren't being looked after properly. So that's kind of our pitch, and that's the value that we add. And in our industry, you bring up a good point because there's always that fear, everything's moving to the cloud. Does that mean our industry's going out of business? Well, it's funny, like that was the word on the street like 7-8 years ago. Like, what's going to happen when everything moves to the cloud? It happened, and we've like everyone in my business, I'm part of some peer groups where we talk, and everyone in our line of business has like never been busier with projects, with moving people to the cloud, with maintaining cloud systems. It's easier to like manage clients remotely. Like I can get a client in Texas now just because everything's cloud-based. So we can have that laser focus, and it's been a good thing for our business.
Wow, that's great. That is a very powerful sales point. Two things that you mentioned that I took strong note of were risk and the hassle of one of your clients having to set up their own IT department or services, regardless of if they go to one of those big tech companies. Plus, as you said, just the time cost of it. It just feels like it would probably be too much for them to try to do that on their own. When, like you said, they could pay a price of 2 employees a year and get a whole team for themselves. So to sum that up, that was very convincing. Thank you.
Cool.
Next, can you explain the outreach process of getting new clients? Basically, how do you guys market yourselves and reach out to potential clients? So
the types of clients we have, as I mentioned, are clients that have businesses that want a valuable service when it comes to IT. And the really good thing about our business is that when you get a client, if you take care of that client, they will never leave. And the reason for that is it's kind of like your CPA that does your taxes, or your attorney that does certain work for your business, right? Like when you trust that person, when you trust that team, reach out to. You don't want to then disconnect from them and try something just because you can save 10% or something, right? Mm-hmm. So we call it in our industry, a very sticky type of client, a very sticky, like even if they get frustrated with like maybe someone on my team doesn't call them back in time, it happens, like, we all make mistakes, right? That's not going to upset a client to the point where they're going to just change IT vendors. Or if they're like, let's see if we could save 15%. They're not going to do that because there's a big fear of, if they did change, would the service be worse, for that discount? Are they not going to keep me as secure? Are we going to we know what we're getting now, so are we going to make this big mistake by switching? So since we have a very sticky type of client, that's good and it's bad when it comes to marketing, right? Because it's not like we can just easily talk to someone and you say, hey, you want to try our services? Because like they're essentially married to whoever they're using now, whether that be in-house people, like maybe they're trying to build an IT department and having some frustrations. It's even difficult for them to move away from that, or another firm. So what we look at is we look at the quality of the client we get. So we don't want to just get a bunch of clients every month. We want to, like, every few months, if we get a new client that's a very high quality client, we know that we're going to have them for an average of 8 to 10 years. So we want to, like, just pick those clients that are high quality. So the way that we do that is we join different associations where we meet people. For example, in the legal field, there's industry specific events that they hold in Los Angeles where lawyers get together, and our clients are part of those groups already. So those sing our praises. We might do sponsorships at those, CPA shows or engineering events, or nonprofit events where different LA nonprofits meet. And our clients that are nonprofits, our clients that are CPA firms, our clients that are engineering firms, they sing our praises and they'll introduce us to their colleagues. So it's a slow process, but as I said, we want to add those clients slowly and methodically so that each one that we add is a high quality client that pays on time, that appreciates our services. So we do it very much in a old school way of, like, meeting people in person and being connected through events and, sponsoring different items at events and so forth to get our name out there. But it's mostly, getting in front of people. What we did before COVID is that we'd actually host breakfasts with like 20 people. And I would just invite clients, and I'd invite potential clients to a breakfast where mostly it was just so that everyone could get to know each other, kind of like a networking. And then, we'd finish off by just talking about what we do and having our clients talk about what we do and sing our praises. And, if we got a client that day, great. But more than likely, we would have someone call us 6 months later or a year later that said, hey, we're at your breakfast, and finally we realized we definitely need to switch our IT. I don't know why we waited so long, but we remembered that we had you at that breakfast, and thanks for inviting us, and we'd love to get a quote. So we like that in-person, that connection with our potential clients.
Nice. Thank you. So let's see here. So how, regarding clients, how does your company optimize client relationship management, i.e. customer service and satisfaction? You mentioned one of your employees might not return a call every once in a while. Those types of things happen, but how do you best manage your customer service and aim for that to be as optimal as possible?
So we do that with data and managing our KPIs, which stands for key performance indicators. I'm sure a lot of people know that on this call today. Yes. The main one that we use is we call it CSAT, and it stands for customer satisfaction scoring. We use a company called Smileback, and essentially the type of service that we do uses a help desk platform, so that if someone opens a ticket by phone or they open a ticket by email, there's a ticket that is generated and emailed to them, and everything is in that ticket. Like if my team responds to them, it's in that ticket until it's resolved. And then when it's resolved, or when our team deems that it's resolved, it closes the ticket and sends a little like happy face, neutral face, or sad face. And you guys have probably seen that in different websites for help desk platforms you've used with like, e-commerce and things. And we use that to track it. And right now we have a 98.5% positive rating, which is really good. It's one of the best, in the industry peer groups that we're part of. So we're proud of that. And that's the way that we can see if like an individual team member is deviating from that. Like if one guy is doing much worse than that, we know that's an issue. Or if one client's, doing different than the average, we know that there's a problem with that client. Maybe we're missing the mark, we're not meeting expectations. And then we're able to see that data in real time and get that information. So all of those reviews, hundreds of these reviews come in per month, actually thousands per month actually. And if it's negative, I'll personally get an email for it. So I want to know, even if someone puts negative, immediately, like what happened, then the team will contact me usually before I can even reply to the team. But then we have a very quick internal meeting. What happened? They talk to the team member from our side. Then we reach out to the client. We say, we're sorry that we missed your expectations. Sometimes it's an accident. They accidentally click the negative one and we're like, make this big deal. They're like, no, we didn't even, that you guys were great. But sometimes it's a legitimate issue. So we want to like take that very serious. But the positive ones, so many are positive that I don't see those personally until we like look at a monthly meeting of like, the percentages and so forth. So that's really important. And then that's the real-time data that we can get on that. And then we also have yearly reviews, which we call SBRs, strategic business reviews. And that's an annual review that we have with the client where we get feedback from them. We tell them what's going on in our world. We make recommendations. We learn about their environment. It's like a big touch base with the client. That's the SBR, which is annual. And then we have QBRs, which are quarterly business reviews. And that's a quarterly time to like kind of polish up that SBR. So like, oh, we had that annual review last quarter or 2 quarters ago or 3 quarters ago. Let's talk about that. Here's what we're doing differently. Sounds like you guys are moving your business to a different city. Let's talk about next steps on that. So it kind of helps us stay in the loop. So those annual reviews, which are the SBRs, and the quarterly reviews, the QBRs, they help keep us in tune with the client so that we can make sure that we're meeting their expectations and make sure we're on the same page.
Wow, that's very great. That's very good insight. If I ever start my own company, I'm definitely going to be on top of all this terminology, because it sounds fantastic how you guys just manage your customer service. You did mention you go to peer reviews with other, I'm guessing, CEOs in the same industry as you. I want to know, how does that benefit you, and how have you found it to be fruitful for you as a CEO?
So yeah, I'm part of this group called IT Nation Evolve, and it's called Evolve because as business owners, we all evolve together. And as you said, it's a collection of CEOs from around the country. And I actually travel quarterly to go to different parts of the country to be part of this. So it's a big deal. It's a lot of expense to do this, to travel, to be part of the association, airfare, hotels for like a week per quarter. That's a lot of time that I'm dedicating. The way that it benefits me is that we kind of have a culture in this group that I'm in. It's called the go giver culture, which is like, we want to be able to give just as much as we get. And so I'm eager to share best practices on what we're doing, like our SBR, QBR process is something that I got from another team member. Like literally, I didn't invent that. It's something that 5 years ago, they're like, yeah, we have this thing called SBRs. I'm like, well, what the heck is that? Oh, it's this thing with strategic business reviews. And then he's like, here's our Excel, here's how we do it. I'm like, oh, that's really awesome, dude. Like, you must have spent years perfecting this. It's like, yeah, I did. And then I feel like obligated to like help him. I'm like, oh, here's how we're doing this. Like, migrating clients to the cloud more efficiently. Here's a tool. Can I have someone on my team call you and help you with that? Like, you feel like grateful for the advice that you give, and you want to, that you get, and you want to give that as well. So it basically is like, as I said, it's very expensive to do this, but like it pays in multiples, because instead of me trying to figure this out for 5 years, or this for 6 months, or this for 2 weeks, I literally can just pick up the phone and call anyone in the country that is part of this group. Or at these quarterly meetings, we have structured meetings that go over like, what's the profit margin you guys are getting when you sell hardware? Oh, damn, I'm way less than everyone else. I had no idea. Okay, then let me talk to some people and probably raise my prices. Or what's the gross margin we have on recurring service revenue? When I started, I didn't even know what that meant in the context of my business. And then within a couple of days, I figured it out. And then over time, we refined that. So one of the things we do is we look at all of our financial statements as a group openly. So I'm part of a group of 10. There's over 1,000 members in the country, but I'm part of a group of 10 CEOs that we completely intimately look at our financials, like as if they're my CPA. Here's how much profit I made. Here's how much it costs for this and that. And that way we can like be honest and open with each other and help each other improve. So advice that I would give to this group, by the way, like whether or not you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to work for a successful company, it's like, and this is a big mistake that I made early in my career, is that I thought I knew everything. I thought that if I didn't know, I could figure it out, which is probably true. I could figure it out on my own. If I want to take 5 years to figure out something that someone else already did. But I learned that if I put my ego aside and say like, okay, I don't know about this, and I'm not afraid to say that I have no idea what an SBR is. Can I please learn from someone? It's such a like hack to be able to like get advice from people. And like, even if that's like someone that wants to go work for, Google, and not be an entrepreneur, work for Google, but talking to people in the industry, talking to people who already work for Google, getting advice, learning the ropes, and not feeling like, oh, I'll be able to do it on my own. I think that's huge, and something that like I didn't know early on in my entrepreneurial journey. I didn't know that like it would be so like good to get coaching from other people and get peer groups that I'd be able to learn from. So it's just been like if you look at our business progress, as soon as I joined that peer group, it like rocketed up. It's just insane. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's noticeable how our revenue and our profitability went up since we joined the IT peer group. And I'm also part of a peer group called EO, which stands for Entrepreneurs Organization. And EO is there's business owners from a wide range of different types of industries, not just IT, all over the world. So there's an EO chapter in London, there's an EO chapter in Hong Kong, everywhere. And then of course there's an LA branch that I'm in a similar group that we share, information on how we grow our business and challenges we have and successes we have and so forth. So I think leaning on associations, leaning on other humans, for everything is so beneficial, and you get to feel good helping others as well, and you learn by helping others too.
Cool. So how is your company organized internally, employee wise? Do they work in teams? Do they service clients individually? Are certain teams assigned to certain clients? Is there any notable hierarchy that you have?
Yeah, so we use a platform called EOS. It stands for Entrepreneurs Operating System. And it's based on a book called Traction, which I highly recommend. It's written by Gino Wickman. For anyone who wants to start a business, Traction is an awesome book that basically gives you the framework to run the business. So one of the chapters in that book is all about people and accountability. So we have an accountability chart that we have built using the EOS framework that essentially shows who's accountable to who. So there is somewhat of a hierarchy. I'm at the top of that hierarchy. I'm the CEO, but also in this EOS platform, I'm called the visionary, because I'll set the vision of what types of things we're doing as a company from a very high level. And then, as I mentioned, we have a service manager. And in the EOS world, my service manager is called the integrator, and he's the one who executes on the vision that I set. And then under the service manager is our service team, account managers, and individuals who support the clients and so forth. So there is a pretty well-structured hierarchy to the services that we deliver and the way that our company is structured.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely going to make a note to read that book. I was like getting new books to read.
It's a good one. And when you read it, it's like, it seems so simple. You're like, this makes perfect sense. But it's all about the major components of running a business. And there's businesses like literally like 100 times bigger than my business that run the same EOS platform. There's consultants that their entire job is to consult businesses on how to do EOS. And again, EOS is something that I learned from being part of these associations. People saying, hey,
sure.
Do you run EOS? I'm like, no, I don't even know what that is. And then I learned and got the book, and then I'm like, I can't imagine running a business without it. So
Great. So I want to ask you about you starting Datastream. We know that you started it in a booming decade for computers, the internet, and technology as a whole. This was obviously time right after the dot-com bubble, when households and businesses all across the country began adopting computers in masses. And it was really the turn of the century and a spur into the new age of technology. Do you think this helped your business in its early stages? You being someone that had valuable skills in an emerging market. And if you do you think timing is everything when it comes to starting a company? And was your timing spot on?
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because there are some. So your question, you ended by saying, was my timing spot on? And right before that, you said, is timing everything? You brought up some really interesting points of like, when I started the business, the economy was growing in a different way with technology. But when we started the business, I would say there's 2 years that we started the business. One is 2001, when we were still in college. And the other year that I would give is 2007. and that is 2 years after I graduated. The reason I'm giving you 2 dates is because one of them is like starting the business, like, yeah, like in our dorm room, let's start a business. Cool. Like, let's get a logo. Cool. We have a business now.
Yeah.
That barely means anything. And then
Yeah.
2007 was really a make or break moment when we went full force and like, okay, instead of getting a job, literally, we're going to start a business. So those are 2 years. The interesting thing about those 2 years is everything you said is correct, that the economy was growing out of control, technology was booming, but there was 2 really big economic events that happened. One of them was, the stock market essentially crashed with the dot-com boom and bust of the year 2000. And then 9/11 happened in 2001, which we just, recognized 20 years after 9/11, which was a big blow to the economy, and people freaked out. And that was the end of the world in terms of the economy at that point. And then 2008, many of you guys will remember the financial meltdown, which, impacted every area of the economy. So while the macro picture was that everything was growing, if you zoom out far enough, when you look at those 2 years when we pretty much, started 2 phases of our business, they were right next to, economic downturns. So I wouldn't say that timing is everything. I would just say that you have to have a good business model, and you have to be persistent. And if you lose a bunch of business because the economy tanks, you just have to keep going and maybe pivot and shift your model. So I don't think timing's everything. It's just right now, interestingly, there's more opportunity than ever. I mean, there's terms now like social media that, like, we all know what that means, but 10 years ago, it wasn't really even a thing. And there's like social media managers for companies now. It's like a job where you can be a social media consultant. So that's just one example of like thousands that are jobs now that didn't exist. So starting a business now is kind of easier than ever, in the sense that you can get the tools. You can connect with anyone in the world. You can have people collaborate with you from anywhere on the globe, and learn from YouTube and just make it happen. So just have to get in there and do it.
Sure. So being that you talked about sort of enduring almost 2 full stock market crashes and economic downturns, I want to piggyback off that and ask you, what was your darkest or worst period of your time as a CEO of Datastream, and how did you get through that period?
So there's a very simple answer, and I don't even have to think about it. 2 months after I bought my business partner out, I was a little stressed that he left. We had planned it in advance, and I appreciated that he wanted to move on. And we had started it together, so we were like always, we did everything together at USC, had all the same friends. We were always together building the business. But I appreciated it. I'm like, I get it. He wants to move and travel the world, and he doesn't want to have the stress. So even though that was cool and I was excited by that, 2 months after he left the business, we lost our biggest client. And that biggest client made up 21% of our revenue. And a week after that, that was just detrimental, because I was thinking, what's going to happen next? Am I going to have to lay people off? And I was worried about the economy. Is this, did we do something wrong? It was a budget issue with this client. They had a really bad budget that year, and they needed to cut their costs. And then 2 weeks after that, I got a call from my second biggest client saying, hey, we need to talk. Our budget's really bad this year. We need to reduce our expenses. And then my mind started wandering in terms of like, well, if the second client goes just like the first one, and then if I lose 1 or 2 more clients, I could be out of business. And so I went into like a very dark time as an entrepreneur, and just like I couldn't describe it to anyone. They were like worried, like what's going on, what's the problem, and it was just like this fact that like I was staring at potential failure of like this event that I couldn't control. The client had a terrible budget. They didn't have the money to pay for us anymore. They had to like cut back and go with a much cheaper provider. Similar thing happened with my second client, and I just had this like spiral in my mind of what's next. I didn't want my team to see it. I would like come into the office with like a smile on my face that was a fake smile, because I didn't want them to know that I was like in this really dark place. The way that I overcame it was, first of all, that second client, they didn't leave us, but they reduced their contract by 25%. So we were able to keep them, but we took a little hit on the revenue. And I remember in the darkest point of that, I would be researching things and how to get out of like this funk and, dark times as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how do we get over this? I remember reading that like just showing up is what you have to do sometimes. When you don't know what else to do, just show up to where you're supposed to be. And that sounds so simple. It sounds so like, ridiculous. Like, of course you're going to show up, but just literally like, where should I be? 8 a.m. I should be at work. Okay. Just show up. The team sees that I'm there. What should I be doing? Do your work. Just do the work that I have in front of me. Just keep going and moving forward. So I know that might sound very simplistic, but when you do have a really dark time like that in your career or personal life, sometimes just showing up is part of that. And what happened when I continued to show up, eventually, I would continue doing the events for marketing that we did. We got another client and another client. And interestingly, we barely even lost that revenue because by the time the client actually left 4 months later, we had already gotten 4 new clients that roughly equaled the revenue of that one big client. And it was a nice lesson, like don't have a client that's 21% of your revenue. It's better to have 4, 5, 6 clients that equal that same amount, because if one of them leaves, that's not as hard of a hit. So that's how I overcame it. Simple as that sounds, just showing up and just doing my job, so to speak.
Okay. So now regarding dark times, we have to talk about the COVID pandemic, as we do in all of our events, which is always fun. What were your company's most substantial obstacles resulting from COVID, especially in the first year of the pandemic?
Can I be totally honest with you?
Sure.
So I obviously feel so bad for anyone that's been impacted by COVID, for the deaths, for the impact that it's had on people's families and loved ones. It's a terrible thing. It needs to be taken seriously, as we all agree on. But 2020 was the best year of my life. And the reason it was the best year of my life was because I got to spend time with my kids at home. As I said, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. My wife was pregnant with our first at the time, and then he was born during COVID, or with our second child at the time. And so we were working from home, and I got to spend all this time with my family, have this home office that I'm now in. That's like where I work from. And interestingly, like our office lease was done on June 1st of 2020. So like just a few months into the pandemic, our 5-year lease, half a decade office lease was up. And our landlord was like, are you going to renew for another 5 years? And I said, no, like we're all working remotely and my team loves it. They're like, do you want to renew for a year? No. Do you want to renew for next 6 months and think about it? I'm like, why would I renew for 6 months? Like literally, we're probably going to still be locked down in 6 months. So that was a big push and a transition. And we transitioned the way we did business. Like we used to have this big, beautiful office in downtown Glendale, which was great. Now we all work remotely. My team loves it. I love it. We have conference space at our clients and so forth that we can, we have monthly meetings and certain weekly meetings that we can just go. We have places to go, but for the most part, we're working from home. So in that sense, it was awesome being with my family, changing to remote. And then our business being IT, all of our clients virtually overnight said like, we need to work remotely. And you're the most valuable part of our business as our IT partner, that we need to work remotely like now, like right now, like tomorrow. We have 80 employees, we have 60 employees, we have 170 employees that needs to work remotely. So it was super busy for us, but we kept our clients happy and we transitioned all of them to remote, and we did it securely and with cybersecurity in mind, and continuing to do everything that we did. And we got new clients because of it, because our clients were like, dude, if your IT company can't handle the pandemic shift, Datastream IT can. So we got new clients out of it. It ended up being by far our best year ever business-wise, and this year is on track to even beating that year. So I know that wasn't your question, but it ended up being just like an awesome year for us. Again, my family is taking the pandemic very seriously, and my heart goes out to people affected by it. But it was just a really good year for us. So it didn't classify as a bad year or a dark time for us.
Sure. So you obviously talked about the growth that you saw. Would you say that the main reason your business grew during the pandemic was so many of your clients moving remotely, and that's why you gained new clients and kept the ones you currently had? Our
clients working remotely was a big contributor to that. but also the pandemic caused our clients and our potential clients to rethink the way they did business. I think like all of us are rethinking things in life because of the pandemic, right? The way that we work, the types of work that we want to do and so forth. So in that sense, our potential clients were like, okay, we have all this shift in the way we're doing work, and we never thought about cybersecurity from working remotely. Maybe like their provider could help them with that, but they couldn't do it in a secure fashion that gave them comfort. They were happy to revisit. So as sticky as our industry is, remember I said our industry is very sticky where like clients stay with us forever. This was a point where some clients were like, oh my God, like we're working with some random IT company. Let's look for a more professional firm like Datastream IT. So in that sense, and I look at the data in our peer group, the best in class companies like ours, which is they perform at the top 10% of all companies in terms of profitability, stability, revenue, and so forth. The best in class companies are growing like crazy like us. The ones that are towards the bottom 10%, the ones that don't have their act together with business, they're still trying to figure out how they're doing, their business plan and so forth, they're not doing as well. So what's happening is clients are leaving the ones that don't have their act together and moving to companies like ours, who we're grateful after many years to, have a really solid business model and deliver on that. So those are all contributing factors.
Got it. Given the current state of still being in a global pandemic, more or less at least, what do you think the whole work from home, not just in your industry, but in all industries, what do you think the whole work from home situation will end up being? Do you think it'll sort of stick even in the 5-10 years to come in the future, or will it sort of find a middle ground?
I think COVID-19 accelerated a lot of trends that already were happening. I think people before COVID-19 were wanting to work from home more, maybe work Fridays from home, this and that. And I think the pandemic accelerated that shift. I don't think that people are going to exclusively work from home. I think there's going to be a hybrid model, but the big shift is here to stay. I think, the offices of the past that like everyone showed up to work every single day, I think that's very quickly fading away and it's not going to return. But a hybrid environment of like an office that people can come and go as they please, use conference rooms as they please, be able to come in when they need to, and maybe some workers don't come in at all because they're in different states or countries. I think that's what's going to be the future of work in terms of work from home or work remote.
Sure, it's definitely a sort of acceleration of the globalization of how people work, I think.
Absolutely.
And to tie into the topic of technology connecting and globalizing the world, knowing that we previously had a discussion off camera about our passion for cryptocurrency, I'd like to ask you about your thoughts on blockchain, Bitcoin, and decentralized finance in general. And what potential do you see in blockchain technology? And what do you think some people either don't get about it or just don't, or why they don't believe in it?
Yeah, so
I know that's a big question. Sorry.
That's a big question, but I like it. So as many people know, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency.
Sure.
And now there's tens of thousands of different coins and cryptocurrencies out there that do different things. My personal belief is that while there are probably dozens of coins that are valuable in different ways because they provide a function, and as you mentioned, DeFi, distributed finance, there's a lot of coins that are really good in that space. My personal belief is that Bitcoin is the big king in the space, and not just because it's the first one, but it's the coin that is extremely decentralized. So people run Bitcoin servers in their basements. Companies can start up, on a whim, and there's been a lot in Texas, in South Carolina, for example, in the US and parts of the world like New Zealand and so forth, where people run Bitcoin farms. So the network is extremely decentralized, and that's where the value is derived, because there's a limited supply of only 21 million Bitcoin. And the network is extremely hard because it's very distributed. So a government can't step in and say it's illegal. I mean, it's almost as laughable as saying like the internet's illegal in our country. Like, what does that even mean? The internet's so widespread and decentralized. So because of that, the value of Bitcoin, which today hit a new all-time high of over $66,000, which was very exciting to see. The value of Bitcoin is going to continue to accelerate, in my opinion, both at the rate of growth and how high it goes. I think we'll see a $1 million Bitcoin within the next 4 years. And I think Bitcoin can go as potentially high as $2 to $10 million in the next 10 to 15 years. And the reason for that is I think this is getting into a different path, but our country's printing a lot of money. It's inflating in value because we're just printing more and more dollars, which makes each individual dollar worth less. Countries like Lebanon, where my family is originally from, it's very tragic to see that the currency is inflating there as well at a worse rate. Same with Venezuela, same as El Salvador. So countries like El Salvador have adopted Bitcoin as their currency. They're the first to do so, and they definitely won't be the last. So because of that, I'm a big Bitcoin fan. I think even if you can get a fraction of a Bitcoin, you can get $100 of a Bitcoin or $50. I think it's something worth investing in. But it's based on the blockchain technology, which all these other coins are based on, which basically ensures the integrity of the network and the coin. But Bitcoin is the most decentralized, which is why I really like it. And I think it's just gobbling up the financial world in a way that people don't realize yet, in the same way that the internet gobbled up everything in a way that was not at all understandable then. I mean, when the internet was starting, we barely had email, we barely could listen to audio online, and now like we're streaming 4K movies on Netflix like it's nothing. And I'm talking to people right now using video from my house. We never imagined that the internet would. I don't even think that I'm using the internet until I thought about it right now. So same things happening with crypto, same things happening with Bitcoin, and it's going to be slowly realized and then suddenly realized by everyone.
Sure. Yeah, I think 1 million to what'd you say, 10 million is a ambitious goal, but honestly, the way that I've thought about it, or not a goal, but rather a prediction, the way that I've thought about it is look at the total market capitalization of all the gold in the world, which is $10 trillion. All the cryptocurrencies in the world are currently at $2 trillion market cap. And if you really think about it, cryptocurrency has a far, far, far more useful or application than gold does. Gold's a store of value, whereas crypto can truly take over a finance for human society as a whole. And when you look at it that way, I definitely think a projection of the whole cryptocurrency market being $100 trillion totally not being too ambitious. On top of that, you mentioned your belief in decentralization and blockchain technology. Are there any other projects that you're interested in other than Bitcoin? I mean, obviously you're a maximalist when it comes to Bitcoin, but I do know your cousin works at Avalanche. So are you interested in that project and any others as well?
Yeah, so Avalanche is a great company. For those of you who haven't heard of it, the ticker is the symbol is AVAX, AVAX, and it's a coin that's produced by Ava Labs. That's really interesting because it's in the DeFi space. There's NFT projects that are written on it. There's smart contracts that are written on it. So, like I said, companies like Ava Labs and coins like AVAX, obviously Ethereum as well. These are all coins that I believe are going to succeed. So it's not like a winner take all thing. Like I think that's the error that some people think. Like, is it going to be Bitcoin because it was first, or is Bitcoin going to be like MySpace and go out of business and there's going to be another one? Like, I don't think you can think of it that way. There's so many. Basically, crypto is just as big, if not bigger, than the internet. And as it unfolds, I think Bitcoin is going to be kind of like TCP/IP, which is the language that the internet communicates on. I think Ethereum is going to be like the new cloud computing platforms of the future, and all these other coins like AVAX and the list goes on with these DeFi projects. They're going to be a lot of them are going to go to zero, but I think some of the valuable ones are going to be used for different things. There's going to be an entire ecosystem that the world communicates on and value is going to be transferred in.
Yeah, I totally agree. And honestly, my overall view when it comes to cryptocurrency as a whole is it might not want to get adopted by really big authoritarian or not even authoritarian countries like China, North Korea, even the United States, where you have these big institutions that are sort of rejecting Bitcoin, rejecting cryptocurrency because it competes with their financial interests. But when you look at companies like, or not companies, sorry, countries like Ethiopia, El Salvador, like you mentioned, Venezuela, starting to adopt crypto because it brings financial power to people who don't have it due to their the economic states that they live in. And also, Lebanon is a good example. Although they haven't adopted it, I think they should. That being my country as well. It's inevitable to think that crypto will take over the world, seeing that our financial systems are literally tethered to governments, which in many cases can be corrupt, and having over 4.5 billion people living in authoritarian governments with a lot of corruption and bad economic systems that have over 20% inflation on a yearly basis sort of does push the idea that we should be seeing something give power to the people, and that, in my opinion, is blockchain and cryptocurrency. And on top of that, I'd like to mention that blockchain has a lot more use cases than just the currency. NFTs is one of them, but also just data, bottom line period, supply chain data, and verifying things, signatures, and people having social security identities on the blockchain, coming to consent, using consensus algorithms to verify things, voting also. So I know this is a business discussion, and we sort of went on a tangent, but I love talking about crypto. So I just wanted
it applies to business. So absolutely.
Yeah, it is. We have an event coming up with John Haas at Alva Labs Business Club X Blockchain Club at USC, and that's in January. So I'm excited for that one too.
Oh, you connected with him. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. He agreed to do an event with us.
Awesome. That'll be great.
We're collabing with the Blockchain Club at USC, and it's going to be hopefully a good one.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, everything you said, I completely agree with, and it's like inevitable. I mean, there's so much value. These countries that have destabilized countries and governments and currencies, they're the ones that benefit most from it. But there's a phrase that like number go up, right? It's kind of a joke, but like the number keeps going up for something like Bitcoin, which is almost like a virus. It's almost like a hack. Like people that own it want more of it. They, companies are now owning it. Eventually, it's gonna cause, I think, large companies and world banks to like FOMO in and be like, oh my God, we need to put 1% of our assets in this.
Yeah.
And then it's going to just really explode. That's when I think it's going to do the $1 to $10 million. But yeah, there's so many blockchain based technologies that are so valuable because we don't have to trust centralized parties anymore, like governments and companies and individuals. We can just trust the technology.
Yeah. And Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve just cranking that money printer,
Exactly. And the SEC, not to go down this too much, but the SEC just approved a Bitcoin ETF a couple days ago, which is now it's huge because it's kind of like the stamp. I mean, the more things that the government does, like allowing Bitcoin to exist, but yet it's taxed, for gains. And now the ETF being approved, it's very difficult to go back on this. So I think the days of like, are they going to allow Bitcoin to exist? Those are over, I think. I mean, it's just going in one direction.
Yeah. And you mentioned institutional adoption as well. I mean, that's happening in droves. You see really, really big banks and financial institutions buying in, PayPal, Charles Schwab, you name it, you got it. Like they're buying into it.
Morgan Stanley just issued a press release saying that for their high net worth individuals, they recommend 2.5% of their assets to be in Bitcoin. And this is Morgan Stanley, like a super old school investment institution, which is insane that they're recommending it at all, let alone 2.5%. That's a lot of their high net worth individuals. I mean, they're putting their reputation on the line by putting that in writing, right? So I think it's only a matter of time quickly before other institutions follow, and it's like a domino effect that'll continue.
Definitely. Yeah, I didn't know about that, but that is very interesting. Morgan Stanley. Okay. We have about 15 minutes left before it hits the hour and a half mark. We do have some audience questions I want to be asking, so let me just take a look at them. Um, during the start of scaling. Okay, as a CEO, how much time per day did you invest into your business at the beginning versus today?
I would say that I invest more time in my business now than I did in the past.
Okay.
As I mentioned, for me, starting the business was um, almost like a hobby in the beginning. I started small. I started light enough with my partner that we can still go to USC football games and hang out on campus. And, we didn't want to just be in our dorm room working on the business all the time. So
Yeah.
each year that progressed, I would say I spend more and more time on it. And now it's just, I have an extreme passion for it, being part of these other groups, researching how best to be a CEO, using platforms like EOS. So I invest a lot more time than I did in the beginning because I had that transition. And so I still do a pretty good job of keeping a good work-life balance with spending time with my kids and my family
Sure.
and keeping my mind healthy and relaxing. But I also really enjoy the work that I do on the business as the CEO.
Cool. With the pandemic, are you planning on maintaining remote work as a standard for your company?
Yes. And so the plan right now is to work remotely indefinitely. And the reason for that is we have team members that work for us that have even moved away from Los Angeles. I mean, we have one team member that moved to Irvine. He's awesome. He does a great job. He's part of the team. And before, like thinking back 2, 3 years ago, if he moved to Irvine, I don't know that he would have stayed on the team, which is ridiculous now. So the fact that we're all remote and he can do that, I have someone working for me in Toronto, Canada. We wouldn't have thought outside the box like that before. So it's definitely here to stay, but with the caveat that we do want to keep in-person meetings. We want to do team lunches, team meetings, team activities, meet in conference rooms, meet on site at clients, keep as much as we can in person just to continue getting to know each other and collaborating. But it's just really enjoyable for the team to work remotely. So we're going to keep it.
Cool. This is an interesting question here. Would you make the move to have your company accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, and why or why not?
I would. I would. I've thought of that. The only drawback would be that I don't think any of our clients have enough Bitcoin to pay us regularly for our services. But
Okay.
it is, to some, I think it would sound risky to say yes, but I would
Yeah.
I would absolutely do it.
Yeah. If anything, it would be an untaxed, untracked investment for Datastream IT.
Well, we definitely want to report it just to
Oh, right.
prove
Yeah. You would
it.
report it. Of course you
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
If the IRS is listening, we're definitely going to report it, guys.
Of
Don't
course. Well, I mean,
worry.
it's gonna happen eventually. I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, there's definitely gonna be a point within the next 10 years where you start taking Bitcoin payments for sure, right?
I think so. The big drawback is like I don't want to pay for anything in Bitcoin. Like I have
Yeah.
some Bitcoin that I've invested in. I don't want to pay for a car with Bitcoin. Like why would I
Yeah.
give up an asset that's appreciating at
Mm.
170% a year on average so that I can
Yeah.
buy it and trade it for a vehicle that's depreciating? So that's
Yeah.
going to be the tough one.
Yeah. I can see that, and that's why some people view Bitcoin as the store of value, and then some of the other coins as
Transaction coins, yeah,
transactional coins. For example, stable coins, which are tethered to the dollar. But
for
then
sure.
again, people question whether those are centralized or not. So
Yeah, that's a whole
yeah,
nother
that's a
debate.
whole
Yeah.
that's a whole nother discussion there. But I did want to mention something else. Okay, let's look at these questions. Okay. Throughout all of your years of experience in growing your company, what do you think is the biggest accomplishment and the biggest regret?
Wow, that's a really deep question.
Yeah.
The biggest accomplishment would be the fact that I started a business and grew the business and had it succeed, and also successfully bought out a partner while staying friends with him. So that's a big
Yeah.
one, but that, starting it with someone and buying him out on friendly terms, I think that's the biggest accomplishment that I have. My biggest regret is that I didn't buy Bitcoin earlier.
Yeah. A lot of us have those regrets.
I learned about Bitcoin when it was $80 per Bitcoin.
Wow.
Now it's 66,000. It hit today.
That is a deep regret.
And I didn't buy a single Bitcoin at $80. I bought it much, much more expensive. So, but you can't go back in time.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can't. Um, yeah, I mean, it is an accomplishment, first of all, to retain your relationship with your ex-business partner. And also, I'd say it's an accomplishment to never have, since college at least, worked a job for someone else. Don't you think? Like, you have been self-employed your whole life almost, right?
Yeah, actually, that's completely true. I've never received a paycheck, and that's just actually the way that started was that it wasn't very, illustrious in the beginning, but like even before the company, I would do computer work for like individuals and
Yeah.
old grandmothers and like, oh,
Yeah.
pay $20 an hour to Louie to fix your computer. So I did that early on, like in middle school, and just like always wanted to earn money. And that's kind of how the business started too, that we had that skill that we can evolve into a legit business model. So I guess I never had a paycheck other than from the business.
Not many people can say that.
Guess so, yeah.
What are some of the threats facing the IT industry or your company now? Specifically, I guess companies of your size that do, like companies in your peer group, for example. What are the biggest threats facing that level of IT company?
So there's one threat that comes to mind. That's an overarching threat that's very severe, and that is cybersecurity challenges. So as most everyone knows, cybersecurity is something that's evolving by the hour. The way that we combat people trying to hack into systems and vulnerabilities that need to be patched. So for a company like ours, that's medium-sized company, pretty good size, but we have to constantly be looking out how we can better ourselves and being part of these peer groups to learn from them and learn from companies that consult us on it so that we can consult our clients. For companies like ours that don't keep up, it's going to be absolutely terrible. There's a story, I won't mention who it is, but I have a friend in one of these peer groups in New York that has 60 employees, company like ours, that they basically got crypto locked. And what that means is that files get locked up by a hacker, and then you have to pay them usually in cryptocurrency, like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. He had 150 clients. He had 60 employees. All of his 60 employees for his IT company got locked up. At that same moment, all of his 150 clients got locked up, which were, companies that needed their data like that minute. And they were all affected at the same time. I mean, I can't even imagine the stress of, like, as he describes it, the value of his business went from however many million it was worth to zero in 1 minute. It's worth nothing at that point in time. That, like, every one of his clients, representing thousands of users, are locked up, and there's Bitcoin demands for each of them. Pay us 100,000, pay us 800,000, pay us 600,000 to his company and to his clients. And so he had to navigate through that, and it took over 25 days for every single client to be back up and running. And like in my business, if you tell someone like it's going to be 25 minutes to get back up and running, they'll be upset. If you tell them it's going to be 3 hours, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's 3. If you tell them it's 1 day, they're going to be like, can you imagine almost an entire month until, I mean, it's just, but this happens. And to him, it's so unfortunate that, like, if it happened to one client, that would be the end of the world for me. I'd be so stressed, right? But can you imagine 150 clients and his own company? He couldn't even get into his tools to do that. So definitely cybersecurity is huge. I mean, I have to think every minute that something can happen to our company and our clients. So the companies like mine that don't keep up, that don't struggle to keep up, and do everything they can, they're going to fall behind.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a serious situation. How did that company get past that ransomware attack? I mean, it seems like, would they even have enough cryptocurrency to, like, that sounds like millions of dollars of crypto or
Well, yeah, they ended up not. Some of the clients, like some of his 150 clients, ended up paying the ransom, even though they were discouraged from doing so. But what he did is he had everything backed up for all of his clients, right? But just because you have it backed up doesn't mean like you press one button and it's restored. Like you have to like figure out which backup you're going to use, go back in time 3-4 hours, then mount that. It takes hours. You have to do it for each server, each cloud server, and then do it for all the workstations. So it's like, for one of those, it takes days, which is why 150 of them took almost a month. And the way that the hack happened was that one of the tools that his company used for all of his clients, that tool was hacked. And because the tool was hacked, all of the 150 clients that were using that tool with that login got vulnerable. And the tool basically told every single computer and server and workstation to like install this virus, like as if it's like a security patch, like, oh, you need to install this. And they did it within like 5 minutes. All of them were done, thousands of users. So it's just like heartbreaking to even think of that, the stress that he went through. So yeah, and again, going back to like the value of a company like ours, as opposed to someone trying it themselves. I mean, it's not even a question. When you tell a story like that to a client and be like, are you guys prepared for this? Like to set up an IT department on your own, or, you know, have someone in your firm try to do this? Like it's not a question. It's totally worth paying a firm like ours to get that premium secure service.
Yeah, that sounds disastrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's almost 9:30. It seems like we've got through most of the good audience questions as well, and all of our own questions. So I think we're going to get to wrapping this up. First off, I want to thank you, Louie, very much for being generous enough to take your time and be at this event. And secondly, I'd like to thank the audience for attending and the whole team at Business SC for helping make this happen. So I want to wish everyone a great night and take care. Thank you, Louie.